Good morning, everybody. Wow, listen to that. I'm really echoing. I feel like the voice of God. I'm really just the voice of the Indy, though. Welcome to IndyFest. This is our 6th annual IndyFest. Can you believe it? Yeah. I'm John Ralston. For those of you who don't know, I'm the CEO of the Indy. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We've been operating in Nevada for almost 9 years. We've grown fourfold in staff, believe it or not, since we started around the kitchen table in Carson City almost 9 years ago. And we're now the only statewide news organization in Nevada. We're very proud of that. You are already a great audience. I like it. Two rounds of applause in the first paragraph. I have to tell you that this is the hardest and best thing that I've ever done in journalism, and I'm really, really lucky that that is true because of all the talented colleagues that I work with. I hope you go away today. You are all, because you're here in this room or watching on the live stream, you're already supporters of our nonprofit journalism. But if you know anybody who might support us, or if you want to increase your support, you know what to do. I'm very proud of what our brand has come to represent. It's what I hoped when we started it. In-depth, fact-based journalism that helps people make sense of a world that is growing more chaotic by the day. I'm especially proud of this year's lineup at IndyFest. It's a great mixture of local and national guests who bring a valued perspective to a variety of issues. This one has not been easy. First of all, who does the governor think he is calling a special session on the same day that IndyFest starts? But he's going to make it up to me, and I'll tell you about that in a second. We also had not one, not two, but 3 Democratic elected officials commit to be part of this program and then back out. I'll have more to say about why and who they are in a column next week on the Indy site, because really, it's a sad commentary on today's politics. But as I like to write, onward, right? No other way to go. Before we get on with the program, I do want to thank everyone at Station Casinos that's here tonight, especially Mike Britt and his leadership team who made this happen for us. We're so grateful to partner with stations and to make IndyFest possible. Please give them a round of applause. Speaking of the governor, who has sat down with me for interviews, not only at Indy Talks, but also he actually flew to Austin to be interviewed by me. He must really like me, or he's a glutton for punishment. I'm excited to announce that we have secured the governor for an event. It's going to be early next year. We're going to announce it very soon. And be sure to watch our website and events page for more details. Finally, we wouldn't be able to put on these events without sponsors. And some of them are here today, but I want to read the list of sponsors, and please give them a round of applause at the end. Station Casinos, Caesars Entertainment, the A's. Did you see they're out there? I'm already getting excited to see home runs go out onto the Strip. The Castroverde Law Group, Agassi Foundation for Education, Southwest Gas, the Raiders, UFC, Pharma, Nevada Mining Association, Core Construction, and the Robert A. Stoldahl family. Now, is that an eclectic list of sponsors or what? So we have a great day in store for you, a great day tomorrow. And so, as they say, let's get on with the show. All right. Our first panel is about immigration. If you looked at the program, you know that. It's a topic that has been in the news for years, but it's been in the news in a much different way, I think we'll all agree, during the second Trump administration. Joining us today are 2 well-respected immigration attorneys, Martha Menendez and Michael Kagan. You can figure out which is which on your own. Welcome to both of you, and thanks for coming to IndyFest. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
And joining me to lead the questions is our phenomenal Indy co-editor, Michelle Rindels. Michelle, take it away.
All right. Thank you guys so much for being here. I've been so excited to be able to throw questions at you guys. Amazing experts. Martha previously was a columnist for the Nevada Independent. Yeah. So I can think of few sectors that would probably be more different from one administration to the next than the immigration world. How has your day-to-day as an immigration attorney changed starting this past January?
I mean, I feel like it first changed in 2016, and that's when I was working with Mike. I think I started in 2019 at the clinic, and doing that kind of work. I don't litigate anymore, but in that piece, and I'm sure Mike is living it way worse still right now. I used to make this joke that was actually very much grounded in truth, that we had to check Twitter every morning to see where the law was and maybe even change our motions, our briefs to reflect that, because it was that chaotic. And now it's, a million times more. And so, but I think the biggest thing that's changed for me, even now that I don't litigate, it's that there's a very real fear now that it's not, it just feels like they're just getting started with the real work that they're trying to do, which is, it feels to me, it's terrorizing people. That's how it feels to me. I don't know, Mike, your day-to-day.
Yeah, so the UNLV Immigration Clinic's the only statewide pro bono provider of deportation defense, especially for people in detention. We also represent a lot of unaccompanied children. So for people in detention, just early this year, calls to our office tripled from last year. It's important to keep in mind we were beyond capacity in 2024. So so now it's extremely hard to keep heads above water. In many ways, I would say this Trump administration has been what we feared the last one would be. But the last one featured a lot more psychological warfare and a lot of performative cruelty. We still have a lot of performative cruelty, but it's backed up by much more mass activity, and I think it's going to get worse.
You're talking about that mass activity. Obviously, they vowed to do mass deportations, 10,000 new ICE agents, more money for ICE than has ever been budgeted.
Right.
How does, though, those promises and those press releases compare to the reality that you're seeing? Is it being implemented as planned?
So it's actually, they are definitely scaling up. And I think we'll have massive numbers of arrests and deportations by the end of the administration. This administration has, though, oddly been not very transparent about numbers. So I think that is because the actual numbers would enrage both their base and their opponent's base for opposite reasons, which we could get into. But there's this publication called the Indy, reported in the middle of the year that the arrests in Nevada by ICE were about 4 times higher than last year. It's actually hard, I have to say, though, to follow that. What we do get from DHS, really the only somewhat reliable numbers, are detention numbers. They're up 10% since July to the end of September. But what we also see with this, and is incredibly important to understand in terms of the effect, is that more than 70% of the people in ICE detention in southern Nevada do not have a criminal conviction, not even a DUI. Some of them might have a pending charge, but by being taken by ICE, they actually may never face trial for the pending charge. This can disrupt a domestic violence prosecution, for example, but many of them have no criminal record. That is not what a lot of voters convinced themselves of last year, for better or for worse, and it's not what the American public generally wants, but it is what they're doing, and it's predictable. When you do mass deportation, it means regular people going to work, taking their kids to school, and it also will become very racialized, and we're seeing all of that.
Yeah, I think the last thing I read, and this was a few weeks ago, so I'm sure it's gone up, but I think it was something like 180 U.S. citizens were arrested, and then sure, they let them go, they figured it out, but it's really this, it's the first time in my life, and I was born here, it's the first time in my life that I've had to ask my mom to walk around with her passport. Like, that's insane to me. I'm terrified. She lives in a small town outside of Chicago. So I'm terrified that she doesn't speak good English. She does, but if she gets nervous, she's not going to be able to respond. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing that there is no there's no real like policy on who they're getting. They're just like sweeping. And the thing that scares me the most, though, I think, is not so much, obviously this is horrible, the detentions, but not knowing who took your people. You know, they're masked. They all say ICE or police, but when you call these places, nobody knows where they are. You have to go, and this is us as attorneys trying to find them. Imagine someone who's never been in the system, who has no idea what to do. This is your parent, your children sometimes, you know, elderly, they don't care, sick people who need their meds. That to me is the most terrifying thing, because that's when we're starting to talk about, and when we say they're disappearing people, this is what we mean. Some people have ended up fully deported, some of them without their kids, with no idea how to get back with their kids. The kids, US citizens in many cases. It's just a really complex terror scheme that is really affecting all of us, whether we're US citizens or not.
We had a story a couple weeks ago about a deportation arrest that was captured on a Ring doorbell camera, and the whole backstory was the daughter trying to find her dad, and the detainee locator tool had gone out, and he was moving around, and they were trying to fly him away. I mean, is that typical?
Yes.
And is that how it's always worked and it's supposed to work?
Sort of, but worse, right? Like everything else. Yes, it's always worked that way in the sense that that locator is there, and it can be very helpful. But think of it this way: they detain someone. It's on the agent or whoever works at ICE to put that information in there. If they get the name wrong, if they spell it wrong, if they get the two last names, because most, at least from Latin American countries, they'll have two last names. They'll put a hyphen in between, or they'll put an S instead of a Z. Any little mistake, you're not going to find that person in there. And now, at the beginning, when all the raids started, the excuse for not being able to find people there was that they didn't have capacity to update it as quickly as they were detaining people, which already, right? Like, that's just craziness. So now I don't know, you all probably use the locator much more than I do, so I'm guessing it's a lot more difficult to actually find
It is.
people.
Even on a good day, it's not that informative. So one of the things that is sometimes very frightening is that the detain locator only says if it's working correctly, only says when someone's no longer in detention. But when that happens, you don't know, does that mean they've been released or been deported? It doesn't say how they're out. They just say they're not in the detention anymore. Yeah. But when I was in high school, I had a Chilean Spanish teacher. She failed to teach me Spanish, but she did show us a documentary about disappeared people in Chile. And she had to explain to these suburban American high school students like this idea of disappearance, right? And that this is very hard to understand. It's now routine for us that we can't find people, that we hear someone may have been arrested, that we have to do I'm having to train students just yesterday on how to really carefully ask someone to try to identify what was the law enforcement agency that might have taken someone. It should not be like this in a democracy.
Michelle, let me just jump in and ask a question here, because, what's going on in Chicago now is really frightening. And Christy Nome, the head of the DHS, said that no American citizens that have been arrested. She just said that recently, which, could be easily disproven. But let's put aside what the Trump administration's tactics are and how outrageous some of the rhetoric is and will continue to be. There are a lot of Americans, even though Trump's numbers on immigration have gone down, who say these people are in the country illegally. Mm-hmm. That means that they should not be here. They should either go back home or self-deport, or they should be forcibly deported. Now, the two of you, in my opinion, do the Lord's work, and I admire both of you greatly. But I also understand why some Americans say this is a problem, and this person might be taking my job or could be a threat to my family. How do you answer that?
Well, I can, if
Go ahead.
I can, yeah. I think, I personally do not care why someone is here, if they're a good neighbor, if they're doing their thing. It's not my business. I honestly don't care.
Even if they broke the law to get here?
What law are they breaking, though? That's what I'm saying. They crossed a border that we made up, and tomorrow it might be further out, it might be further in. It changes all the time. It's imaginary. We created it, and we can create new ones any day, right? It's a choice that we make. So that, to me, it's a crime that we invented. We made it a crime to do that so that we can charge them with something. And Sure, we want to get people that are dangerous. I have no problem with that. I do have a problem with the way we do it, because we should not be terrorizing people. We should absolutely not be allowing people, masked people, it could literally be anybody, and we're already seeing the scams, people pretending they're cops or ICE to take advantage of people. We should not be seeing the violence. I do not care what a person did. It will not matter to me. I don't want to see them thrown on the floor. I don't want to see their family members who are screaming and crying and desperate thrown on the floor to get them. We just saw a video of, just last week, there was a video of a man holding his child, his 2-year-old child, in his car, having a seizure. And did that stop the agents from trying to pull him out of the car? Not even a little. They didn't even flinch.
Yep.
That's the kind of inhumanity that we're seeing. That is the problem I have with it. We can differ on what we think the crime that an immigrant committed is, or I see nothing but benefit. They contribute to the economy, they pay their taxes, and they absolutely do not get free healthcare, y'all. I wish, I would be signing up for that. But I think there has to be a limit to the kind of terror that we're willing to inflict to make a point, or to demonize a whole group of people. That is what we should all agree on, I think.
If I could try by analogy on this, first of all, if I could confess, this is being recorded, it's going to be on YouTube forever, and I will confess right now, Las Vegas Metro can see this. I broke some traffic laws driving here today, and yet you're still letting me be on the panel, and I appreciate that.
Well, we didn't know that.
Well, now I'm here. But you can kick me off. You can deport me from the panel. But even that is not exactly the same as the immigration system. Outside my neighborhood, there's a stoplight, and it breaks a lot. And there was one time when I was sitting at that stoplight, my daughter was in the back seat, and she had to go to the bathroom. It's really close to our house, actually. And the stoplight was red, and it just never changed. I was watching the clock just forever, right? And again, another confession. I made the decision. I'm an adult. I knew what I was doing. I looked both ways. There was no traffic. I ran that red light. That's our immigration system. I take it as encouraging at a certain level when people say, I want people to do it the right way. Me too. But that implies that there is a right way to do it. And our immigration system is one where something that people need to do and will do, human beings are made to migrate. But that red light, for most people, never changes to green or even yellow. And the bigger question that we face is after I ran that red light, does that mean that if I help my kid with homework later that evening after coming home, do they not have to turn in their homework because it was illegitimate? Does it mean that everything else that happened in our entire life, if you've seen sliding doors, the way that kind of moment changes everything, is illegitimate because I ran a red light? That's our immigration system. Yeah. I actually think most Americans actually do understand that. 1 in 20 people in Nevada is undocumented. I don't think most Nevadans really want their neighbors all taken away that way, although there's a lot of misunderstanding about why they're undocumented and why they can't get papers.
Going to 287G, which we've seen come back into Nevada and come in a variety of counties, and a lot of pressure to do more of these agreements between the local police agencies and ICE. We had a decision in 2019. It was a big story at the time. The Governor Lombardo, then sheriff, withdrew from the 287G agreement, said this court decision in Southern California said if you don't have a state law that deals with a civil immigration arrest, you can't really be doing this. And then we see 287G come back again, and has any of that underlying...
And face litigation again. I think one of the most important things to watch right now is the ACLU lawsuit about whether or not just 287G, but any Nevada police participation in holding people for ICE, whether any of that is authorized by Nevada law. I think it's probably not, but we don't have case law on it, and I'm glad the ACLU is testing that finally.
What do you think changed that got us to be back
I don't.
in 2017.
This is not being driven by good sound law enforcement or public safety concern. The evidence is really clear. One, there's no correlation between immigration status and likelihood to commit crime. If there is any correlation, a citizen is more likely to commit a crime than an immigrant. That's extensive data and research on this. So it just doesn't make sense for local police to target immigrants or spend any resources on immigration enforcement. It would be like focusing on like the electrical building code as a means of cutting down on violent crime. There's no real connection. But it is all political wins. Even when Joe Lombardo was sheriff, he switched shortly after Trump's first election in terms of this position with no public announcement at the time. Same thing this year. Suddenly there's a new election. Trump comes back into office. Metro changes position. There's a huge amount of kind of false pressure, I think, that has pressured a lot of institutions about we might do bad, vague things to you if you don't cooperate with us. And you can see there's different personalities of local governments. Some will fight the federal government. We're supposed to have a federal system where local governments can do their own thing. Ours tend to go along and get along. It tends to be their general approach. And I think we see that with Las Vegas Metro here.
Yeah, and I think the way you started the conversation today, Michelle, when you said, there's probably no area of the law that changes so dramatically between administrations, and that's so true. As lawyers, we're sort of taught, and especially when we're like speaking publicly, not to get too political. It is impossible. It is literally impossible to do this work and not be political, because your frame of reference changes every 4 years at least, right? And so it's very much political. It's very much sort of going with the, like you said, sort of like keeping, going with the flow, and I think that's very much what's happening here. We, the fact that we were placed on the sanctuary list and then not, and then again, and then not. It's kind of one of those games that they're playing. And I do feel that in some ways, there's some alliance there, sure, with certain politicians and this federal administration, but I also feel it's more of we see what's happening, and I think that's that's one of the main reasons they're doing this. They're terrorizing cities like Portland, DC, Chicago, LA. We see that. We don't have the capacity, I think, and I do think some people think that way, that we don't have the capacity to stand up to these forces if they show up here. We don't have that structure here. And so that certainly, I think, is a big fear. But then that goes back to we are fully controlled at all times by what the person at the very top is demanding.
Mm-hmm. You had talked about threats coming from the administration, and it's hard to ignore what's going on in higher education. Mm-hmm. UNLV Immigration Clinic is part of UNLV, right? So has it ever, it feels like somewhat of an existential threat to the clinic.
It's definitely not as safe to be in higher part of the university as I would have hoped, because there's threats to the ability to do things like this all around. I would have thought when we started the expansion of the immigration clinic that a university was a place where you can do things that you don't have to worry about whether this year it's 51% or 49% in the last election. That's changing across the board. Now, to be really clear, we and our staff haven't stopped for an hour. We are continuing to work and harder than ever. I worry a lot about the mental health of our staff, but it is definitely a lot dicier. I don't like, the immigration clinic is still operating, and yet UNLV is shut down its undocumented student website. I think that's a huge mistake. I think it's not the way to deal with bullies. And I think that if they want to improve programs, I think they should, but I think that this atmosphere of retreat that we see in higher ed, including at my university, is incredibly discouraging. But if the university leaders are fearful right now, then I think it falls to the rest of us to stand up for principle. UNLV is an incredible institution for this community. I think that our graduations that I get to attend every year are the greatest celebration of immigrant success anywhere, not just because we have immigrant students, but even more of their parents. so many parents will come up to faculty. It's an extra bonus on my salary that I also get people coming up to me and saying about their son or their daughter that this was my American dream. If that can't fill you with patriotism, I don't know what can. And I think that UNLV and many other institutions in this country will be strongest when we say that's who we are and that's what we do loud and proud, not say, if we reword this, would you stop sending us threatening letters? That is not going to help with these people. We ought to say, this is what we do because this is our community, and that's what universities are for.
Are you guys, have you ever considered quitting? You talked about the mental health aspect that's affecting your staff. Are there days you just wake up and don't want to face that work?
I mean, I think I have quit. I think we all dream of it on the worst days. I do feel, and this sounds pretentious, so I try not to say this a lot, but I do feel that for a lot of us, it's almost like a calling. Like, once you do this, might take a break, but it always calls you back. Like, it's almost like that Liam Neeson, is that his name? Line, you know, I have a particular set of skills, like I can apply them here, like I have, you know, you have to do it. But
we're practicing law, right?
Yeah. But like one of the reasons I left the clinic was it just got too much for me to, you know, I was solely working with unaccompanied children. It really got, and you know, talking about immigration court is a whole other like week event. But going in there as an attorney, having trained as an attorney where I like rules and I like when things are, you know, we know what's going to happen, and immigration court, all that goes out the window. So it was very hard to show up with these children scared. They don't understand what's happening. They don't understand. They're holding your hand under the table, and you know, you've just told this court these horrible things that this child has gone through, and they're making the argument why that it's not so bad, or what happens to you happens to all the other kids in your country. What, are we supposed to take all the kids in your country? It just got so dystopian and so odd, and it felt to me that I just couldn't do it. I felt like I'm going to explode one day. I'm going to say something I shouldn't. I'm going to lose my bar card. It was that bad, and the shame that came with, I don't know if we were talking, but the shame that came with like leaving that was something I had to work through for years. It felt like I was abandoning these kids, and how dare I feel this way if they're like so much worse, and what they've been through is so much worse. And we talk about secondary trauma, and we're trained, and you know, we talk about that a lot. We work on that a lot now with younger attorneys, but it's so tied into the things you value that if you do decide to take that break for your own good and you know you'll be strong, it does come with a lot of, I'm letting them down. You know, I should be stronger. I should be able to do this. And that's something I think we deal with still with everyone.
I think every immigration defense attorney is dealing with this. I talk to students about it, right? So I interview all my students for clinic, and a lot of them have very close personal connections with not just the immigration system, but with deportation. And we do deportation defense, complex, high-stakes deportation defense. And some of them want to avoid this for this exact reason, and I completely respect that. And some of them want to go in and say, I was 8 years old when this happened to my parents, and I couldn't defend them then, I'd like to defend somebody else. And that, for them, that's motivating. I'm in a really privileged position because I can, as a professor, I can decide a lot how do I spend my time as long as I'm productive. When I came to UNLV, I was burnt out, actually, on this work from having worked for 10 years in the Middle East with Sudanese and Somali and Iraqi refugees. I had experience then that is proving a lot more useful than I realized in working in authoritarian regimes. And I think back to a lot of like the Egyptian and Palestinian and Lebanese human rights activists that I work with in their bravery, and I draw a lot from that now. And at this time, in this place in American history, a lot of the time I'm thinking, how will I account to my grandkids in the future? And I think I ask a lot more people to ask themselves that.
Can I jump in and ask a question, Michelle? You're both lawyers. We're a nation of laws, right? I know you're skeptical of that.
Reportedly.
Yeah. But seriously, and ever since I started covering politics, which is, like the black and white TV era almost. It seems like it's that long. This has been an issue. And there's been talk of comprehensive immigration reform. I think a lot of Republicans would be surprised to know that in 1986, the President of the United States, by the name of Ronald Reagan, was the biggest proponent of it. There's been the gang of however many that have been negotiating. There's some people who think that the Democrats have just liked this issue to try to get Latino votes in a very condescending way. Republicans are opposed to it. Some of them maybe out of racism or other. Okay, fine. What would help? What changes in the law? What laws could actually help this problem?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think I mean, there's definitely the political solution, and I think that's the biggest barrier. But the way I always understood the IRA, which is how we call that law from the 90s, right? That's what ruined everything. The way we approach immigration reform, that law is huge, right? And it covers all immigration, not just undocumented folks, but every kind of immigration there is. Whenever we go and change something, we change that little area of the code. Like, think of it as this big book, and we'll change but we never take the time, or we've never taken the time to see how that works with this one over here and this one over here. So now it's this like a jumbled mess that nobody, I know, I think even I saw in the program where like considered experts. I will never feel an expert in this field because there are too many moving parts that affect each other moving part that is constantly changing. And so it's almost, it feels like an impossible mountain to climb. There's so much that needs to be changed, not just in the family immigration, not just in, temporary foreign workers, but in the all the other kinds of visas, and there's so many. It's just a whole big mess now that I think we need to start from scratch with like some really good and new and fresh ideas about how to handle this. As Mike said earlier, migration's not stopping. Like, we could create all the laws, we could put up a wall, we're gonna find a way. Migration is a human right. It's beyond a human right, it's a human impulse. We're never going to stop it. And so we really need to go into that with that in mind. It has to be a living document that is able to be looked at every few years and figured out as society changes, as things move around. We're going to see a lot more migration having to do with like climate crises and all these things, and that's not even in there, right? Like, we weren't even thinking of that in the 90s. So I think it's a complete overhaul.
A lot of the discussion of this in Washington is based on some pretty unrealistic assumptions about what U.S. policy can accomplish, and we'll talk about this as if it's just an open-closed question, like open border or closed border, and setting the volume right on your car radio, and that is always going to lead to failed policy that leads the public to say, I don't like what's going on. I think that right now we are in a crisis of dealing with Trump's mass deportation and mass detention efforts. That's the most urgent thing. I think that we do have to look and face the reality about a huge failure in the Biden administration. I am not actually talking about the border and what people usually refer to. I think it was a failure to use an opening to articulate an alternative vision. American politics is stuck on immigration between just as if it's just open or closed, and the public never gets what it wants. A public opinion on immigration is famously thermostatic. So when Biden is president, the public turns against immigrants. When Trump is president, and it's happening again now, turns more favorable to immigrants, but that really is reflecting that people are just never happy with what they're seeing. Biden came in with a mandate to repair the damage of the first Trump administration, of a president who had made anti-immigration policy his calling card, but Biden didn't want it to be his calling card, and he did not articulate a vision of an alternative to just this very simplistic open or closed. I think Americans' public opinion is closer to wanting order, which is not the same as closed. We want our airports to be orderly, but we also want them to be able to get passengers onto planes. And I think a lot of Americans, a pretty large number, would actually be pretty happy with an immigration system like that. then you could ask, why didn't you come the right way, more legitimately? But Joe Biden didn't spend much time trying to articulate what it would take to build that, and it would be hard. Let's be clear about that. It's not even just get past this filibuster in the Senate.
Right.
It's very hard. It takes a lot of infrastructure as well as policy change. But this is not an issue on which many elected officials want to devote that kind of capital.
We've got a couple races in the ballot, governor, legislative races, and congressional races next year. Not some of the bigger ones, but what are you guys looking most toward? What should immigration is in a lot of campaign ads, and not everybody has the ability to do something about it. What races do you think are going to be the most pivotal for immigration in Nevada?
Well, obviously, our marquee race here is the governor's race. We don't have a Senate office on the ballot in Nevada next year. And that's going to be interesting because if there is a backlash to the Trump administration, Nevada voters' only vehicle for that would be the governor's election. That's a complicated issue. Governor's elections are not exactly the same as Senate elections. But one thing I am watching is to see how Governor Lombardo, as always, tries to navigate his relationship with the Trump administration. How close is that hug? And also, to what extent does the Trump administration target Nevada? We've had a change in leadership recently. I think only one media outlet's reported it, but the ICE Salt Lake City regional office, which commands Southern Nevada, had its commander changed, or apparently, and apparently it's someone from Border Patrol. It's supposed to be more of a hardliner coming in, so that's more hardline than what we've seen so far in 2025. I think they could make life much more difficult for Governor Lombardo if they, start grabbing people at Walmarts in Las Vegas. Right, the things that are happening just down the road in Southern California. So some of what I'm watching is not even what would be in an ad, just whether or not there's any indication that the Trump administration gives any special dispensation to make life easier for Governor Lombardo. Because this is per capita, we have as many undocumented immigrants here as any other place in the United States. So it is a ripe target for ICE and CBP.
Do you think we're going to see expansion of detention here in Nevada?
Oh, definitely. We know we're going to see that.
No. What's happening?
Are there any bright spots in your work at this point in time?
Mike was saying before how he takes a lot of hope and sort of motivation from the folks he worked with in the Middle East. I work with a lot of Latin American attorneys now who are on the other side of this struggle, of this fight, and I take a lot of inspiration from them, but also inspiration in people that are standing up to these bullies, right? So the mayor of Chicago, Mayor Johnson, I think does a beautiful job as a politician of walking that line. Like, he's not going to cede any ground to the bully, but he's not, he comes in there with his own policies, his own views. He's not scared to say them. He's never disrespectful, which is something that we see a lot in politics. He's not throwing dirt. He's protecting his people. That's what I want to see. That's what I care, and that's where I find light at the end of the tunnel. I also find light, like when Mike is talking numbers, seeing how people are seeing this and actually reacting in a more human way, right? Let's get away from the numbers and the politics and stuff. Do we really want to live this way? Do we really want to see our people? And the people you see in these videos, they might be strangers to you. Are you going to be okay with your neighbor, whether you talk to them or not? Because I rarely do, but whether you talk to them or not, are you going to be okay with somebody showing up in their house, all hooded up, taking them away? Is that where you want to live? I want to see people more confident in voicing that, and more confident in showing up for their neighbors and showing up for their fellow Nevadans, right? We're all here and we're all in this together. That's where I find a little bit of light, I think.
I think that's.
I think we're almost out of time here, but I do just want to say, I thought the point that Professor Kagan brought up was interesting in this sense. I think that if Trump had lost Nevada and that we had a Democratic governor here, you would be seeing the same kind of scenes already. I don't think there's any doubt. So there may be some argument that Lombardo being governor has prevented that from happening. But I still think the backlash could hurt him next year. Listen, this is just the kind of thing that I love about the Indies. We can have, I'm sorry, we're calling you an expert. It's not a dirty word. But to have two people have such an elevated discussion about this really, really difficult and complex topic, I really appreciate both of you coming. So let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back in a few minutes with a Republican congressman.